Have you ever been written off by the people who should have known you best? Imagine standing in a room full of family, their eyes passing over you like you're a stranger, their whispers labeling you a failure. That was me, Hannah Carter, at my sister Ava's wedding after a decade of silence. For years, Ava painted me as the sister who'd never amount to anything, while she dazzled everyone with her charm. But that day, they'd learn a truth that would unravel everything they thought they knew about me. This is my story, a reckoning 10 years in the making. Ava Larson, my younger sister by 3 years, was always the sun our family orbited around. Growing up in suburban Boston, she was the golden child, prom queen, dance champion, the one whose laughter filled every room. I was the shadow, the quiet sister who'd rather map out business plans in my notebook than chase applause. Ava thrived on attention. I found peace in purpose. But her light came at a cost. At every family gathering, she'd spin tales of her dazzling life, while my efforts were met with polite nods or outright dismissal. "Hannah's just Hannah," she'd say with a pitying smile, as if my steady grind was a flaw. Our parents didn't help. They'd beam at Ava's trophies, while my straight A's or small online business barely earned a mention. "Why can't you be more like Ava?" Mom would ask when I skipped school dances for work. They didn't see the fire in me, the determination to build something real. Ava's jabs grew sharper over time. By our 20s, she'd moved to New York, crafting a glittering Instagram persona of cocktail parties and designer dresses. I stayed in Boston, then Chicago, climbing the corporate ladder in silence. She'd call me stuck or boring at holiday dinners, her words cutting deeper each year. The rift widened when I stopped sharing my life. Why bother when Ava's stories always drowned mine out? 10 years ago, after a particularly cruel dig at my dead-end job, I distanced myself. I didn't cut ties completely, just enough to protect my peace. Ava didn't notice. She was too busy being the family star. But as I faded from their view, I was building something extraordinary, something no one, not even Ava, could diminish. Her wedding was the first time I'd see them in a decade, and they had no idea who I'd become. I'll never forget the summer I turned 16. I'd spent months building a small online store selling vintage collectibles, my first taste of entrepreneurship. It wasn't much, but to me, it was proof I could create something from nothing. One evening, I gathered my courage to share my progress at a family barbecue. My hands shook as I explained my profit margins to our relatives, my voice trembling with pride. But before I could finish, Ava, then 13, burst into laughter. "Hannah, a businesswoman? You're too dull to be a CEO," she mocked, her voice carrying across the backyard. The adults chuckled awkwardly. My parents just looked away. That moment seared itself into my soul. I felt like I'd been stripped bare, my dreams reduced to a punchline. I went to my room that night, tears burning my eyes, and opened my journal. In shaky handwriting I wrote, "One day I'll show them, not with words but with results." From then on, I vowed to keep my ambitions private, safe from Ava's scorn and my family's indifference. I poured myself into my work, every late night and early morning fueled by that memory. Ava never knew how deeply her words cut. She was too busy collecting accolades, dance trophies, debate awards, the spotlight at every turn. To her, success was loud, visible, something to parade. To me, it was quiet, deliberate, a fortress built brick by brick. While she posted photos of her charmed life, I was learning the ropes at Thornton Solutions, mentored by Margaret Brooks, a woman who saw my potential when my family didn't. That teenage humiliation became my drive, a silent promise to myself that I'd rise above their doubts. By the time Ava's wedding rolled around, I wasn't the girl they remembered. I was someone they'd never truly seen. Ava's wedding was the stage she'd always craved, a day to cement her place as the family's pride. She had no idea I'd be there, let alone what I'd bring to the table. After 10 years of absence, I walked into that venue, my heart steady but my resolve unbreakable. They thought I was still the quiet Hannah, the sister who'd faded into obscurity. But that night they'd learn the truth. I wasn't just her sister. I was her boss, the CEO of MA Corporation. The reckoning was coming, and it would change everything. Growing up in the quiet suburbs of Boston, my sister Ava and I were as different as night and day. Ava, 3 years younger, was a burst of light. Vibrant, charismatic, the kind of girl who could charm a room without trying. Her laughter echoed through our house, her presence a magnet for attention. I was Hannah, the quieter one, content to lose myself in books about business or sketch out imaginary companies in my notebook. While Ava danced in the spotlight, I found solace in the shadows, dreaming of a future built on my own terms. But in our family, her glow always outshone my steady flame. Our parents didn't mean to play favorites, but they did. Ava's dance recitals were sacred events, her trophies displayed like relics in the living room. My achievements, straight A's, a math award, or the small profits from my online collectibles shop, were met with distracted smiles. "That's nice, Hannah," Mom would say, her eyes already on Ava's latest ribbon. Dad would nod, then ask Ava about her next cheerleading competition. Their words weren't cruel, but their indifference cut just as deep. "Hannah, why can't you be more outgoing like Ava?" Mom asked once when I declined to join the school talent show. I wanted to scream that I was building something different, something lasting, but I swallowed the words. Ava thrived on their praise. She'd twirl into family dinners, regaling everyone with stories of her latest triumph. Captain of the debate team, lead in the school play. I'd sit at the table's edge, my updates about a new customer from my online store brushed aside. "Ava's so well-rounded," relatives would say, as if my focus on academics and entrepreneurship made me somehow less. I learned early that my victories didn't sparkle the way hers did, so I stopped expecting them to notice. But each comparison, each sidelong glance, fueled a quiet resolve in me. I wasn't chasing their applause. I was chasing a life that would speak for itself. Our childhood bedroom was a perfect mirror of our differences. Ava's side was a shrine to her charisma, walls plastered with dance ribbons, team photos, and certificates framed in gold. Her desk overflowed with makeup palettes and notes from friends. Her bed draped in bright fabrics that screamed for attention. My side was a study in restraint. Organized bookshelves stacked with business magazines, a meticulously kept budget notebook, and a small corkboard where I pinned my typed 5-year goals. "Boring," Ava would tease, tossing her hair as she caught me updating my spreadsheets. "What's the point of doing something if nobody knows about it?" I didn't answer her then, but I knew the point. While Ava collected trophies for the world to see, I was building skills that wouldn't fade with time. By 15, I'd turned my love for vintage collectibles into a small online business, learning profit margins, customer service, and the thrill of a sale before I could even drive. Ava saw it as a hobby, something quaint compared to her dance competitions or cheerleading stunts. But to me, it was a classroom teaching me resilience and strategy. I'd stay up late, packaging orders or researching market trends, while Ava practiced her routines to pop music blaring from her side of the room. High school only widened the gap. Ava became student body president, prom queen, and debate team captain, roles that came with crowns and applause. Her name was on everyone's lips, her face in every yearbook. I worked after school at a local accounting firm, filing papers and learning the basics of financial systems. My job wasn't glamorous, but it gave me mentors who saw my potential and connections that would shape my future. Ava couldn't understand why I'd choose that over joining her in the spotlight. "You're wasting your life," she'd say, rolling her eyes when I declined to attend her pep rallies. She didn't see what I was building. While she chased fleeting moments of glory, I was laying a foundation. My online business grew, enough to cover my school supplies and save for college. I studied market trends, negotiated with suppliers, and learned to pivot when deals fell through. Ava's world was about being seen. Mine was about becoming. Her victories were loud, public, celebrated with cheers. Mine were quiet, private, marked by a checkmark in my notebook or a new goal pinned to my corkboard. "You're so serious," Ava would laugh, as if my focus was a flaw. But I knew that seriousness was my strength, a compass guiding me toward a future she couldn't yet imagine. Our parents reinforced the divide. They'd drive hours to Ava's competitions, while my after-school job went unnoticed. College admissions love well-rounded students, Dad told me when I skipped a school dance to work. They didn't realize I was rounding myself in ways that didn't show up on a stage. Ava's path was paved with their support. Mine was carved through sheer will. By the time we left for college, her to Cornell, me to a state university on a partial scholarship, our paths had diverged completely. She was the family's pride. I was the one they overlooked. But I was fine with that. I had my plans, my dreams, and a resolve that grew stronger with every slight. One memory from our teenage years still haunts me. I was 17, and I just landed my first big sale in my online collectibles business, a rare comic book that netted me a $500 profit. It was a milestone, proof that my hard work was paying off. I decided to share it at a family dinner, hoping, maybe naively, that they'd finally see me. I practiced my words all day, my heart racing with a mix of pride and fear. When dessert was served, I cleared my throat and spoke up. "I sold a comic book for $500 today," I said, my voice steady despite my nerves. "It's my biggest sale yet." The table went quiet for a moment, and I dared to hope they'd care. Then Ava laughed, a sharp, cutting sound that sliced through my courage. $500. "That's cute, Hannah," she said, her eyes glinting with amusement. "I just raised $2,000 for the cheerleading team last week." The adults chuckled, and Mom quickly changed the subject to Ava's upcoming recital. Dad patted my hand, but his eyes were on Ava, sparkling with pride. I felt my face burn, my triumph reduced to a footnote in her story. That night, I sat on my bed, staring at the corkboard where my goals were pinned. I wanted to tear them down, to give up on dreams that no one else believed in. But instead, I opened my journal and wrote, "They don't see me now, but they will. I'll build a life that speaks louder than their laughter." That moment became my fuel. Every time Ava's achievements overshadowed mine, every time my parents looked past me, I remembered that dinner. It wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that my worth didn't depend on their approval. I stopped sharing after that. Why expose my heart to their indifference? I threw myself into my work, doubling down on my business and my studies. While Ava posted photos of her high school triumphs, I was quietly building a network, learning from every mistake, and setting my sights on a future beyond Boston. That pain shaped me, not into someone bitter, but into someone unbreakable. By the time I walked into Ava's wedding 10 years later, I carried that memory with me, not as a wound, but as a reminder of why I'd chosen to rise in silence. When I left our suburban Boston home for college, I carried a quiet resolve that had been growing since childhood. While Ava, my younger sister, headed to Cornell with our parents' financial support and a suitcase full of confidence, I enrolled at a state university on a partial scholarship. The gap between us felt wider than ever. Ava's Instagram was a parade of sorority parties, spring break trips to Cancun, and selfies with her new friends. I was working 20 hours a week at a campus bookstore, balancing shifts with a full course load in business administration. My days were long, my nights longer, but every step felt like a brick in the foundation I was building. College wasn't glamorous for me. I lived in a cramped dorm, ate instant noodles to save money, and spent weekends in the library studying economics and marketing. Ava's world was loud and visible. Mine was solitary and deliberate. I didn't resent her for it. Her path was her own, but I knew mine required sacrifice. My scholarship covered tuition, but not books or living expenses, so I took on extra jobs, tutoring freshmen in math, freelancing data entry for local businesses. Every dollar I earned went toward my future, not fleeting moments of fun. I wasn't chasing popularity or applause. I was chasing competence, the kind that would open doors no one could shut. My first real break came sophomore year when I landed an internship at a small consulting firm in Boston. It wasn't paid, but it was a chance to learn. I spent that summer analyzing market reports, sitting in on client meetings, and soaking up every detail of how businesses ran. My supervisor, a no-nonsense woman named Linda, noticed my work ethic. "You're not here to impress, you're here to deliver," she told me once, and those words became my mantra. While Ava posted photos of her summer in New York, interning at a trendy PR agency, I was learning the nuts and bolts of strategy and operations. Her internship got her likes. Mine got me skills. By senior year, I'd built a modest but impressive resume. 2 more internships, a part-time job at an accounting firm, and a network of professors and professionals who saw my potential. I graduated with honors, but no one from my family came to the ceremony. Ava was performing in a theater production at Cornell that weekend, and my parents prioritized her. I didn't let it sting too long. Instead, I focused on my next step, a full-time role at Thornton Solutions, a mid-sized consulting firm in Chicago. The job wasn't flashy, but it was a foot in the door. I packed my life into 2 suitcases and moved to a new city, ready to prove myself. That first year at Thornton was grueling. I worked 60-hour weeks, learning everything from financial modeling to client presentations. My colleagues were smart, competitive, and often skeptical of the quiet girl from Boston. But I didn't need to be loud to stand out. I let my work speak, delivering reports ahead of schedule, catching errors others missed, proposing solutions that saved clients time and money. Slowly, I earned respect. While Ava was hopping between short-term jobs in New York, chasing the next big opportunity, I was digging in, building a career one steady step at a time. I kept my head down, my goals clear, and my family at a distance. They didn't know who I was becoming, and I wasn't ready to tell them. Not yet. Thornton Solutions was my proving ground. It wasn't a household name, but it was a place where hard work could take you far. I started as an analyst, crunching numbers and drafting reports in a cubicle that smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. The work was demanding, but I loved it. The logic of numbers, the puzzle of strategy, the satisfaction of solving problems others overlooked. I wasn't there to network or schmooze. I was there to learn, to master every aspect of the business. My colleagues noticed. Within a year, I was promoted to associate, leading small projects and presenting to clients. It wasn't glamorous, but it was progress. Everything changed when I met Margaret Brooks, a senior partner at Thornton. Margaret was in her 50s, sharp as a blade, with a reputation for turning raw talent into leaders. She didn't suffer fools, but she saw something in me. One day, after I'd stayed late to fix a client's botched financial model, she called me into her office. "You're not here for the spotlight, are you?" she asked, her eyes piercing. I shook my head. "Good," she said. "Being good gets you a seat. Being strategic wins the game." Those words stuck with me, a guide for every decision I made. Margaret became my mentor, not through formal meetings but through tough feedback and quiet encouragement. She taught me to think 3 steps ahead, to anticipate risks, to turn data into stories that swayed executives. Under Margaret's guidance, I grew. I took on bigger projects, leading teams to streamline operations for mid-sized companies. My work caught the eye of Thornton's leadership, and by 25 I was a manager, overseeing a team of 5. But the real test came when Thornton was acquired by Lincoln Financial, a larger firm with a national reach. Mergers are brutal, redundancies, power struggles, cultures clashing. Many of my colleagues panicked, but I saw opportunity. I volunteered for the integration team, working 80-hour weeks to align Thornton's processes with Lincoln's. I analyzed workflows, negotiated with stakeholders, and presented recommendations to senior executives. It was exhausting, but it put me on their radar. When the dust settled, I was promoted to director at Lincoln Financial, a role that came with a corner office and a team of 12. I was 27, one of the youngest directors in the company. The responsibility was immense, managing multi-million-dollar contracts, advising Fortune 500 clients, and navigating corporate politics. But I thrived on it. I'd learned from Margaret to stay calm under pressure, to let results speak louder than promises. My team respected me not because I demanded it, but because I delivered. We turned around failing projects, won new clients, and consistently exceeded targets. My reputation grew, not through self-promotion but through undeniable impact. Then came the second merger. Lincoln Financial was acquired by MA Corporation, a global conglomerate with offices from New York to Tokyo. This was a different beast. Higher stakes, fiercer competition, and a leadership team that didn't know me. Again, I leaned into the chaos. I led a task force to integrate Lincoln's consulting division into MA's operations, working across time zones to align strategies and systems. My work earned me a promotion to vice president at 29, a role that put me in charge of a $50 million portfolio and a team of 30. I was no longer the quiet analyst. I was a leader shaping the company's future. But the pinnacle came 2 years later. MA's board began searching for a new chief operating officer to oversee its U.S. operations. Margaret, now a board advisor, recommended me. I was 32, younger than most candidates, but my track record spoke for itself. I'd led successful integrations, turned around struggling divisions, and built teams that outperformed expectations. The interviews were grueling. Hours of scrutiny from executives who doubted my age but couldn't argue with my results. When I got the call offering me the CO role, I sat in my Chicago apartment, staring at Lake Michigan, feeling a quiet triumph. I'd climbed from a cubicle to the C-suite, not by shouting my worth but by proving it every day. Margaret's mentorship was my compass through it all. She didn't just teach me strategy, she taught me resilience. Never let them see you sweat, she'd say when I faced skeptical clients or internal rivals. She showed me how to navigate a world that often undervalued women, how to command respect without raising my voice. When I doubted myself, she'd remind me of my first project at Thornton, the one I'd fixed alone at midnight. "You've always had this in you," she said. Her belief in me became my own. By the time I stepped into the COO role, I was ready, not just to lead but to redefine what leadership meant. I never told my family. Ava was still in New York, job hopping and curating her perfect Instagram life. My parents assumed I was still an analyst, maybe a manager at best. I didn't correct them. Their indifference had taught me to guard my victories, to let my work speak when the time was right. That time was coming, and it would be at Ava's wedding, a moment they'd never forget. As COO of MA Corporation, I faced challenges that tested every skill I'd honed. One of my first major initiatives was a complete overhaul of MA's payment processing system, a project critical to the company's bottom line. The existing system was a patchwork of outdated software, costing millions in inefficiencies and errors. The board wanted results fast, but the scope was daunting. Hundreds of vendors, thousands of transactions, and a tight 6-month deadline. Failure wasn't an option. Success would cement my place in the C-suite. I took it on without hesitation, knowing this was the kind of challenge I'd been preparing for my entire career. I assembled a cross-functional team of 35, pulling the best talent from IT, finance, and operations. We worked around the clock, mapping every process, identifying bottlenecks, and negotiating with tech vendors. I led by example, diving into data models with my analysts, presenting to skeptical stakeholders, and troubleshooting issues at 3 a.m. My team trusted me because I was in the trenches with them, not just issuing orders from above. Margaret's voice echoed in my head. Strategic wins come from doing the work, not just directing it. The project wasn't just technical, it was political. Some executives resisted change, worried about disruptions or their own influence. I navigated their objections with calm precision, using data to counter doubts and aligning their interests with the company's goals. When a major vendor threatened to pull out, I flew to their headquarters and negotiated a deal that saved the project. 6 months later, we launched the new system, cutting processing times by 40% and saving MA $12 million annually. The board called it a triumph. My team called it a miracle. I called it proof that quiet determination could move mountains. But success came with solitude. Late one night after the launch, I stood in my office overlooking Lake Michigan, the city's lights glittering below. The view was breathtaking, a far cry from my childhood bedroom in Boston. Yet, as I held the project's final report, a wave of doubt hit me. Was this worth it? The sleepless nights, the missed holidays, the years of silence from my family. I'd built a career most would envy, but no one at home knew. Ava was planning her wedding, posting photos of her engagement to Nathan Brooks, while my parents still asked if I was doing okay in my office job. That moment of doubt forced me to confront why I'd kept my life hidden. Part of it was protection, guarding my heart from Ava's jabs and my family's indifference. Part of it was pride, wanting to reveal my success only when it was undeniable. But there was also fear. Fear that even this wouldn't be enough to change how they saw me. I thought back to my teenage self, writing in my journal after Ava's laughter had crushed my dreams. I'd promised myself I'd rise, not for their approval, but for my own. Had I lost sight of that? The answer came through an unexpected moment. One of my team members, a young woman named Priya, approached me after the project's success. She was shy, often overlooked in meetings, but brilliant with data. During the project, I'd encouraged her to speak up, to present her ideas to the board. She'd flourished, earning a promotion. "You saw me when no one else did," she told me, her voice thick with gratitude. "I want to be like you someday." Her words hit me hard. I hadn't just built a system or saved money. I'd built trust, inspired someone else to rise. That was the success I'd been chasing all along. Priya's gratitude reminded me of my own journey. I'd faced skepticism as a young woman in a male-dominated field, but I'd proven my worth through results. I'd helped Priya do the same, breaking a cycle of being unseen. That realization shifted something in me. My family's ignorance of my achievements didn't diminish them. It only meant they hadn't caught up yet. I didn't need their validation, but I was ready to stop hiding. Ava's wedding would be the moment I stepped out of the shadows, not to prove them wrong, but to show them who I'd always been. I kept one final secret. MA's board was considering me for CEO, a role that would make me Ava's boss, since she'd recently joined MA's New York office through Nathan's connections. I hadn't accepted yet, but the possibility loomed, a quiet irony after years of her calling me nobody. As I prepared for her wedding, I carried that knowledge like a hidden ace, ready to play it when the time was right. My career wasn't just a job. It was a testament to every moment I'd chosen to keep going, no matter who believed in me. While I was carving my path in Chicago, my sister Ava was chasing a different kind of dream in New York. She'd always been the golden child, the one who dazzled our family with her charm and confidence. When she graduated from Cornell, everyone expected her to conquer the world. Her Instagram painted a picture of success, glamorous parties, designer outfits, and captions that screamed ambition. But behind the filter, Ava's career was a house of cards, built on appearances rather than substance. She had the charisma to open doors, but not the grit to stay inside. Ava's first job was at a trendy PR firm in Manhattan, a role she landed through a college friend's connection. She thrived at first, charming clients with her quick wit and polished presentations. But the job demanded more than flair. It required long hours, meticulous planning, and the ability to handle rejection. Ava struggled with the grind. She'd nail the big pitches but fumble the follow-through, missing deadlines or overlooking details. Within a year, her boss called her out for prioritizing networking events over actual work. Instead of adapting, Ava quit, convinced the firm didn't get her vision. Her next role was at a startup, a buzzy tech company that promised stock options and a cool office vibe. Ava loved the aesthetic: open-plan desks, free kombucha, and a chance to post photos with the CEO at launch parties. But startups are unforgiving. The company needed results, not just enthusiasm, and Ava's ideas, while flashy, often lacked depth. When the startup downsized after a failed funding round, Ava was let go. She spun it as a mutual parting, but I heard the strain in her voice when she called Mom, brushing off the setback with a forced laugh. Ava bounced between jobs after that. A marketing gig at a fashion brand, a brief stint at an advertising agency, a role as an event planner for a nonprofit. Each job started with promise but ended in frustration. She'd charm her way in, dazzle for a few months, then falter when the real work piled up. Her LinkedIn profile was a patchwork of short-term roles, each one dressed up with buzzwords like innovator and strategist. But the truth was, Ava's career was stalling. She was 31, and the gap between her image and reality was growing. Our family didn't see it. Ava was a master at curating her narrative. She'd visit Boston for holidays, regaling everyone with stories of her high-flying life in New York. She'd talk about rubbing elbows with influencers, attending exclusive galas, or pitching to major clients. My parents ate it up, their eyes sparkling with pride. "Ava's doing so well," Mom would say, while I, the sister who'd moved to Chicago and rarely called, was an afterthought. Ava never mentioned her layoffs or late rent payments. She didn't need to. Her Instagram was proof enough of her success, at least to those who didn't look too closely. I kept my distance during those years, not out of anger but self-preservation. Ava's jabs about my boring life had left scars, and I wasn't ready to expose my own journey to her scrutiny. But I heard the family updates through Mom's occasional emails. Ava's life sounded chaotic, a whirlwind of bold moves and quick exits. She was chasing a dream of fame, of being seen as extraordinary, but she hadn't learned that true success requires more than a spotlight. While I built my career brick by brick, Ava was stacking cards, hoping they wouldn't fall. Her confidence, though, never wavered, at least not publicly. She had a knack for turning setbacks into stories of reinvention. Each job loss was a new chapter, each rejection a learning experience. But I wondered if, late at night, she felt the weight of her choices. Did she ever question the persona she'd built? Or was she too busy crafting the next post, the next illusion to notice? Ava's failures weren't the kind you could see on a resume. They were the kind that gnawed at you when the world stopped clapping. Ava's luck seemed to shift when she met Nathan Brooks, a banker with a steady job and a wide network. Nathan was smitten, drawn to Ava's charisma and the vibrant life she projected. Through his connections, Ava landed a role at MA Corporation's New York office as a marketing coordinator. It wasn't a senior position, but it was stable, with a prestigious company name that added weight to her resume. For Ava, it was a lifeline, a chance to rebuild her career after years of missteps. She threw herself into the role, determined to make it her turning point. MA was a different world from the startups and boutiques Ava was used to. It was a global conglomerate, structured and demanding, with high expectations for performance. Ava started strong, using her charm to win over colleagues and clients. She organized product launches, coordinated campaigns, and brought a creative flair to her team's work. Her supervisor praised her energy, and for the first time in years, Ava felt like she was on solid ground. She stayed at MA longer than any previous job, 18 months, a record for her. Then came the promotion. After leading a successful regional campaign, Ava was named Regional Marketing Manager for MA's Northeast Territory, overseeing teams in New York and Boston. The role came with a raise, a title, and the kind of clout she'd always craved. To Ava, it was validation, a sign that she'd finally made it. She called our parents the day she got the news, her voice bubbling with excitement. "I'm running the show now," she told them, exaggerating the scope of her role. They believed every word, their pride in her as strong as ever. Ava saw the promotion as her crowning achievement, a story to dominate our father's upcoming birthday dinner in Boston. She planned her entrance meticulously, as if it were a performance. She bought a red designer dress, booked a hair appointment at a high-end salon, and ordered custom gifts from Milan for our parents. Her Instagram stories hinted at a big announcement, building anticipation among her followers. She even practiced her speech in front of Nathan, perfecting the casual confidence she'd project. "I want everyone to know I'm not just surviving, I'm thriving," she told him, her eyes gleaming with determination. The dinner was her stage. Ava envisioned herself sweeping into our family home, the center of attention as she shared her triumph. She'd talk about leading teams, shaping MA's brand, and climbing the corporate ladder. She'd drop names of executives she'd met, mention trips to the Boston office, and bask in the family's awe. In her mind, the night would cement her status as the daughter who'd made it big, the one who'd outshone everyone's expectations, especially mine. She didn't know I'd be there. I hadn't attended a family event in 10 years, not since her last jab about my dead-end life pushed me to pull back. Ava assumed I was still in Chicago, toiling away in some obscure office job, irrelevant to her story. She didn't know I'd been climbing my own ladder at MA Corporation, reaching heights she couldn't imagine. Her promotion, as impressive as it was to her, was a small piece of a much larger puzzle, one I was about to reveal. Ava's confidence was unshakable as she prepared for the dinner. She saw herself as the star, the one who'd risen above the chaos of her 20s to claim her place. But her success at MA, though real, was fragile. She'd earned the promotion through charm and a single strong campaign, but the role demanded consistency, something she'd struggled with before. She didn't dwell on that, not yet. For now, she was focused on the spotlight, ready to dazzle our family with her latest chapter. Beneath Ava's polished exterior, cracks were forming. Her promotion at MA was a victory, but it came with pressure she hadn't anticipated. The role required her to manage budgets, deliver results, and lead a team that didn't always buy into her charm. Late at night, after Nathan went to bed, Ava would sit in their Manhattan apartment, scrolling through her Instagram, her finger hovering over posts that no longer felt true. "I'm scared I'll never be as perfect as they think I am," she confessed to our mother in a rare, quiet phone call. Ava's life was a balancing act. She'd built an image of effortless success, but maintaining it was exhausting. Every like, every comment on her posts felt like a referendum on her worth. She worried her colleagues saw through her, that her team sensed her inexperience. The family's pride, our parents' glowing praise, our relatives' admiration, was a weight she couldn't shake. What if she failed again? What if MA was just another job she couldn't hold on to? She hid those fears behind a flawless facade. To the world, Ava was unstoppable, a rising star at MA with a wedding on the horizon. But alone, she felt trapped by the persona she'd created. Her confidence was a mask, one she wore to keep the doubts at bay. As she packed for our father's birthday dinner, she saw it as a chance to reinforce that image, to prove she was everything she'd promised to be. She didn't know the truth waiting for her. My truth would shatter that illusion. The air in our family's Boston home was thick with anticipation as we gathered for Dad's birthday dinner. It was a rare occasion, one that pulled relatives from across New England into the warmly lit dining room, where Mom had set out her best china and a spread of Dad's favorite dishes. But the real centerpiece wasn't the food. It was Ava Larson, my younger sister, who swept into the house like a movie star stepping onto a red carpet. She'd always known how to command a room, and tonight was no exception. After 10 years of my absence from family events, I was there, sitting quietly at the table's edge, watching her performance unfold. Ava arrived in a striking red dress, the kind that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Her hair was styled in perfect waves, her makeup flawless, and she carried an air of triumph that made everyone turn. In her arms were sleek gift bags from Milan, filled with luxury items she'd picked up on a recent work trip, or so she claimed. "For Mom and Dad," she announced, her voice bright as she handed them over with a flourish. The room erupted in murmurs of admiration. Aunt Linda gasped at the silk scarf Mom unwrapped, while Uncle Tom nodded approvingly at the leather wallet for Dad. Ava soaked it all in, her smile radiant, her presence undeniable. She wasted no time claiming the spotlight. As we sat down to eat, Ava launched into her big news, her voice carrying over the clink of glasses and soft chatter. "I've been promoted at MA Corporation," she declared, pausing for effect. "I'm now the regional marketing manager for the Northeast Territory, overseeing teams from Maine to Pennsylvania." The table burst into applause. Mom's eyes welled with pride, Dad beamed, and our cousins leaned in, eager for details. Ava obliged, spinning a tale of her rise at MA. Meetings with top executives, high-stakes campaigns, and a future that sounded limitless. "It's a big step," she said, her tone humble but her eyes gleaming. "I'm shaping the brand across 2 states now." I listened, my fork resting on my plate. Ava's role, while real, wasn't as grand as she made it sound. As MA's chief operating officer, I knew her team covered only the New York and Boston offices, a fraction of the territory she claimed. But I stayed silent, letting her have her moment. She was in her element, weaving a story that painted her as the family's shining star. "I've worked so hard for this," she continued, her voice softening for sympathy. "Years of hustle, late nights, and proving myself in a tough industry." Our relatives nodded, captivated. Mom reached for her hand, whispering, "We're so proud of you, Ava." Ava's performance wasn't just about her promotion. It was about cementing her place as the daughter who'd made it. She dropped names of colleagues I knew from MA, exaggerating their titles to impress. She mentioned a major deal she'd closed. One I knew was a standard contract her team had inherited. Every word was calculated, every gesture rehearsed. She glanced at Nathan Brooks, her fiancé, who nodded encouragingly from her side. He was her anchor, the man who'd helped her land the MA job, and his quiet support gave her story weight. The family hung on her every word. My cousin Rachel asked about her trips to the Boston office, and Ava launched into a vivid tale of a client dinner at a rooftop restaurant. Uncle Tom wanted to know about her team, and Ava described them as the best in the business, implying she'd handpicked them. Even our grandmother, usually reserved, smiled warmly, saying, "You've always been our star, Ava." It was a masterclass in storytelling, and Ava was the undisputed queen. I sat there, unnoticed, my presence barely acknowledged. To them, I was still Hannah Carter, the sister who'd moved to Chicago and faded into obscurity. Mom had greeted me with a distracted hug, Dad with a vague, "Good to see you, kid." Ava hadn't even asked why I was there after a decade away. She was too busy basking in her glory, assuming I had nothing to offer the conversation. I didn't mind, not yet. I'd come to this dinner for a reason, and my moment was coming. For now, I let Ava shine, knowing her light was about to dim. As the dessert plates were cleared, Ava's confidence grew bolder. Her promotion had electrified the room, and she wasn't ready to relinquish the stage. She leaned back in her chair, a glass of wine in hand, her eyes scanning the table for her next act. They landed on me, sitting quietly with my hands folded, my expression neutral. I'd said little all evening, content to observe, but Ava saw an opportunity to solidify her triumph by dimming whatever light I might still have. It was a pattern I knew well from our childhood. Her need to lift herself by pushing me down. "Hannah," she said, her voice laced with mock concern, loud enough for everyone to hear. "You've been so quiet tonight. Still doing? What is it, accounts receivable or something in Chicago?" The table chuckled, a few relatives exchanging glances. Her words were a jab, sharp and deliberate, meant to paint me as the sister who'd never risen above a mundane desk job. I felt the familiar sting, but I kept my face calm, my eyes steady on hers. "Actually," I started, but Ava cut me off, her smile widening. "Don't worry, I could get you an entry-level marketing job at MA," she continued, her tone dripping with pity. "I know someone in HR. It's not much, but it'd be a step up from whatever you're doing." The laughter grew louder, Aunt Linda covering her mouth, Uncle Tom shaking his head as if I were a lost cause. Mom looked uncomfortable but said nothing, her eyes darting to her plate. Dad frowned slightly, but he too stayed silent. Ava leaned forward, emboldened by their reactions. "I mean, let's be real. Hannah's always been a nobody while I'm climbing the ladder at MA." The word nobody hung in the air, heavy and cruel. It echoed back to every moment she dismissed me. Her laughter at my teenage dreams, her jabs at my boring life. I felt the weight of 10 years of silence, of building a career they'd never seen, of proving myself in rooms far bigger than this one. My heart beat steady, my resolve ironclad. This was the moment I'd waited for, not out of spite, but out of necessity, to show them who I'd become. I reached into my purse, my movements deliberate, and pulled out a single business card. The room was still buzzing with Ava's words, but a hush fell as I slid the card across the table toward her. "You might want to take a look at this," I said, my voice calm but firm, cutting through the chatter. Ava's smile faltered, her brow furrowing as she picked it up. She read it aloud, her voice trembling slightly. Hannah Carter, Chief Executive Officer, MA Corporation. The table froze. Ava's face drained of color, her eyes darting from the card to me, as if searching for a lie. That's impossible, she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned back, my gaze unwavering. The announcement's in 3 weeks, I said, each word measured. I signed the contract last Thursday. The room was silent, the kind of silence that swallows everything. Laughter, pride, assumptions. Ava's hand shook as she held the card, her world unraveling with every second. I didn't raise my voice or gloat. I didn't need to. The truth was enough. I'd been named CEO of MA Corporation, the same company where Ava had just been promoted to regional marketing manager. She reported to a director who reported to a vice president who reported to me. She'd called me a nobody, but I was her boss, the one steering the company she'd staked her identity on. The irony wasn't lost on me, but this wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my place, not just in their eyes, but in my own. Ava's eyes filled with panic, her breath shallow. She looked at Nathan, who sat stunned, then back at the card as if it might change. This can't be right, she muttered, but the words sounded hollow. I felt no joy in her distress, only a quiet satisfaction. For 10 years, I'd built my life in silence, letting her narrative dominate. Now, with one card, I'd rewritten it. The family stared, their faces a mix of shock and confusion, waiting for someone to break the spell. But I held my ground, ready for what came next. The silence that followed my revelation was deafening, a void where Ava's laughter had once reigned. The dining room, moments ago alive with her triumph, now felt like a stage after the curtains had fallen. My business card lay on the table, a small piece of paper that had shattered the family's carefully constructed narrative. Ava sat frozen, her eyes locked on it, her red dress suddenly too bright against her pale face. Nathan reached for her hand, but she didn't respond, her world still spinning from the truth I'd laid bare. Dad was the first to react. He leaned forward, his brow furrowed, his voice low but steady. Hannah, is this true? CEO. His eyes, usually warm when looking at Ava, held a mix of disbelief and something else. Pride, maybe, or regret. I nodded, meeting his gaze. Yes, Dad. I've been with MA for years, climbing the ranks. They chose me to lead. His mouth opened, then closed, as if the words he wanted to say were stuck. He glanced at Mom, who sat rigid, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Mom's reaction was harder to read. Her eyes darted between me, Ava, and the card, as if trying to reconcile the daughter she'd overlooked with the woman who'd just appended her understanding. Why didn't you tell us? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The question stung, not because it was unfair, but because it laid bare the distance between us. I tried, Mom, I said softly. But no one was listening. Her face crumpled, a flicker of guilt crossing her features. She reached for her napkin, twisting it in her hands, unable to meet my eyes. The rest of the family stirred, their shock giving way to murmurs. Aunt Linda leaned toward Uncle Tom, whispering, "Did you know she was doing this well?" He shook his head, his eyes wide. My cousin Rachel stared at me, her fork forgotten, as if seeing me for the first time. Grandmother, usually silent at these gatherings, spoke up, her voice frail but clear. "Hannah, you've been carrying this all alone." Her words hit me harder than I expected, a reminder of the years I'd chosen silence to protect my heart. I nodded, my throat tight. "I had to," I said. "It was the only way." Ava's reaction was the most visceral. She pushed the card away as if it burned her and stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "This isn't happening," she muttered, her voice breaking. She turned and fled the room, her heels clicking down the hallway. Nathan hesitated, then followed, casting an apologetic glance at the table. The sound of the front door opening and closing echoed, leaving a heavy stillness in its wake. I didn't move, my hands resting calmly on the table, but inside I felt the weight of her pain. I hadn't come to hurt her, but the truth had its own sharpness. Mom tried to fill the void. "The roast was delicious, wasn't it?" she said, her voice too bright, too desperate. No one responded. The family's eyes were on me, their expressions a mix of awe, guilt, and confusion. Dad cleared his throat, his voice softer now. "Hannah, we didn't know. You never said." He trailed off, his words heavy with the realization of how much they'd missed. I looked at him, my father who'd always cheered for Ava, and saw something new. Respect, tinged with sorrow for the years we'd lost. I spoke, my voice steady but not cold. "I didn't share because I didn't think you'd hear me. For years, Ava's story was the only one that mattered. I built my life on my own terms, not to prove you wrong, but to prove I could." The words weren't meant to wound, but they landed hard. Mom's eyes filled with tears and Dad looked down, his hands clasped tightly. The family sat in silence, absorbing the truth, not just of my success, but of their role in my solitude. I didn't linger on their guilt. "I'm here now," I said, my tone softening. "And I'm not going anywhere." It was a promise not just to them but to myself. I'd hidden my light long enough. The dinner wasn't over, but the dynamic had shifted. Ava's absence left a void, but it also made room for a new story, mine. As the family processed what they'd learned, I felt a quiet strength. This wasn't the end. It was a beginning, one where I'd finally be seen. After Ava fled the dining room, the weight of my revelation hung heavy in the air. I didn't follow her right away. The family's stunned silence, their eyes searching mine for answers, held me in place. But I knew this wasn't over. Not for Ava, not for us. I excused myself and climbed the stairs to our old childhood bedroom, where I found her sitting on her old bed, her red dress crumpled, her face streaked with tears. Nathan had stepped out, giving us space, and for the first time in years, it was just the two of us, raw and unguarded. "Hannah," Ava whispered, her voice breaking. "How did you do this? Become CEO without anyone knowing?" Her eyes were wide, not with anger, but with disbelief, as if I were a stranger. I sat across from her, the distance between us more than just the room's small space. "I stopped sharing because no one listened," I said, my voice steady but soft. "Every time I tried to tell you or Mom or Dad about my dreams, you laughed or they looked away. So I built my life in silence." Ava flinched, her hands twisting in her lap. "I didn't know it hurt you that much," she said, her voice barely audible. "I thought you were fine being in the background." Her words stirred memories of her teenage jabs, calling me boring, dismissing my ambitions. But I didn't lash out. Instead, I leaned forward. "Ava, I wasn't fine. I was invisible. And I chose to stay that way to protect myself." She looked down, tears falling freely now. "I was jealous of you, you know," she admitted, her voice trembling. "You always seemed so sure, so focused. I was scrambling to be noticed, to be enough." Her confession caught me off guard. Ava, the golden child, jealous of me? It shifted something in me, a crack in the wall I'd built. "You didn't need to compete with me," I said. "We could have lifted each other up." Ava's fear surfaced next. "Are you going to fire me?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. "I mean, you're my boss now." I shook my head, my tone firm. "I keep family and business separate. Your job at MA depends on your work, not me. Show them what you're capable of, Ava. Not just the shine, but the substance." My words weren't a reprimand but a challenge, one I hoped she'd rise to. She nodded slowly, her face softening, as if seeing me for the first time. "I've been so wrong about you," she whispered. "I'm sorry, Hannah." It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a start, a fragile bridge between two sisters who'd lost their way. We returned to the dining room together, the tension still thick but softer now. The family looked up, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Ava's eyes were red, but she stood tall, her hand brushing mine briefly as if to draw strength. I took my seat, giving her the floor. She cleared her throat, her voice shaky but determined. I owe everyone an apology, she began, looking at Dad first. I ruined your birthday, Dad, by making tonight about me. And I hurt Hannah with things I said, things I've said for years. The room was silent, every eye on her. Ava's voice grew steadier. I called her a nobody, but I was wrong. She's not just my sister. She's the CEO of MA Corporation, and I'm so proud of her. Her words carried a sincerity I hadn't heard from her before, a vulnerability that disarmed the family. Mom's eyes softened, Dad nodded, a faint smile breaking through his shock. I've been caught up in my own story, Ava continued, but I see now how much I missed hers. I'm sorry, Hannah, for not seeing you. She turned to me, her gaze earnest. I nodded, a quiet acknowledgement of her effort. The family exhaled, the weight lifting slightly. Dad reached for Mom's hand, his voice warm. We're proud of both our girls, he said, looking at me with a depth I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't perfect, but it was a step toward healing. Ava sat down, Nathan squeezing her hand, and the conversation slowly resumed, lighter now, as if the truth had cleared the air. For the first time I felt like I belonged at that table, not as a shadow, but as Hannah, seen and whole. In the weeks after the dinner, Ava began to shift. We didn't become inseparable overnight. Too many years of distance lay between us, but she reached out, small gestures at first. One evening we walked through our old neighborhood, the Boston air crisp with autumn. I always thought you were boring because you didn't brag, Ava said, her voice quiet. But you were just real. I was wrong. I smiled, the words warming me. We're just different, Ava, I replied. Not better or worse. Ava took my advice to heart. She led a modest project, a local marketing campaign, but poured herself into it, focusing on results over flash. Her team noticed, praising her for listening, for delivering. I'm trying to be more like you, she told me later, half joking but earnest. It wasn't about mimicking me. It was about finding her own strength, one rooted in substance, not just sparkle. Our family changed too. Mom called to ask about my work, genuinely curious. Dad hung my diploma next to Ava's, a quiet gesture of amends. Ava and I weren't fully healed, but we were building something new, a relationship grounded in respect, not rivalry. She still shone, but now she made room for my light too. And I realized that sharing my truth hadn't just freed me, it had freed us both to be sisters again. Looking back on that night at Dad's birthday dinner, I see it not as a moment of triumph, but as a turning point. For years, I hid my success as Hannah Carter, CEO of MA Corporation, to shield myself from Ava's jabs and my family's indifference. I thought silence was strength, a way to prove my worth without their applause. But standing in that dining room revealing my truth, I realized success isn't about staying hidden. It's about owning your story, even when it's hard. Sharing who I'd become didn't just change how they saw me. It freed me to see myself clearly. One moment lingers. Mentoring a young colleague at MA, Priya, who reminded me of my younger self. Quiet, overlooked, but brimming with potential. Helping her find her voice showed me that true success isn't measured by titles or wealth, but by the lives you lift along the way. My journey wasn't about proving Ava wrong. It was about proving to myself that I could rise without losing who I am. That's the lesson I carry now. Your worth doesn't need a spotlight, but sharing it can light the way for others. My family's eyes are open now, and so are mine. If you've ever felt invisible, know this. Your worth is enough, even when no one sees it. I spent a decade in the shadows, building a life no one knew, because I thought it protected me. But stepping into the light at that dinner showed me that sharing your truth can heal wounds and build bridges. Have you ever been underestimated, told you'd never measure up? I want to hear your story. Comment below. Tell me about a time you proved someone wrong, not with anger, but with who you are. Subscribe to this channel for more stories of resilience, where ordinary people rise above doubt to claim their place. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Maybe they're hiding their own light, waiting for the courage to shine. My parents hung my diploma next to Ava's, a small act that said, "We see you now." It's never too late to be seen, to rewrite your story. Your success doesn't need to shout. It speaks for itself in the quiet strength of every step you take. So take that step today and let the world catch up. This is Hannah Carter signing off, reminding you, you are enough and your story matters.